I still had the scent of his sweat on my skin when I slid beneath the sheets beside my husband. His arm instinctively wrapped around me, pulling me in like a promise, and I almost vomited. Not from guilt, from hunger. That same gnawing ache that had been growing in me for months. I stared at the ceiling, my thighs still trembling, while his breath softened into sleep. My phone buzzed once. Then again. I didn't have to check to know it was him. His messages were always short, demanding, dangerous. I deleted them. Then I cried, quietly. Into the pillow that still smelled like detergent and loyalty and all the things I was shattering piece by piece. By morning, I'd tell myself it was over. By noon, I'd be back in his car, bruises blooming under my blouse like secrets I didn't want to hide. The first time I lied to my husband, it was about something stupid. A late lunch I pretended I skipped, when in reality, I'd sat alone in a cafe for an hour, watching couples and wondering when I stopped feeling like one half of anything. That was 2 years ago, back when I still wore my wedding ring without noticing it, before I stopped flinching when he touched my shoulder in public. Now, I lie every day. I lie when I say I'm working late. I lie when I smile. I lie when I tell myself I don't want to burn everything to the ground just to feel something real. Again. Yesterday, I burned my fingertips trying to iron his shirts. I stared at the blisters, and for a moment I didn't move. I just watched the skin bubble. The pain felt clarifying. Last week I was in a motel, naked under a stranger. I shouldn't even know. The ceiling fan made this rhythmic clicking sound, and with every turn of the blades, I felt myself disassociate a little more. When I left, my knees were weak, but not from sex, from shame, or maybe anticipation. The line between them is thinner than I ever imagined. Flashback, 2 years ago. We were on vacation. My husband was making jokes with the waitress, calling me babe, and holding my hand across the table. I remember laughing, genuinely. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a man who still looked at me that way after nearly a decade. I remember wanting him. That memory hurts now. It feels like watching a movie of someone else's life. Someone who didn't know yet that desire has a half-life, and happiness can be manufactured like a social media filter. Flash to present. My therapist asks when it started. I stare at the floor and say, I'm not sure, but I am. I just don't want to admit that it started when I realized I was more comfortable naked in front of a stranger than fully clothed in front of my husband. Flash to 6 months ago. I saw him for the first time. The him. The man who would become my escape hatch, my undoing, my obsession. He wasn't even doing anything special, just leaning against a doorway, smirking like the world was his to ruin. And I knew. I should have walked away. But the crack had already formed, and some part of me, some dark twisted part, wanted to fall right through it. He wasn't supposed to matter. He was just my father's new assistant, a temporary hire helping with the real estate backlog after my dad's surgery. Young, cocky, and clearly too pretty for his own good. I met him at the house one Sunday afternoon. Dad had invited us over for brunch, and I had come alone because Marcus had golf. He always had golf now, or networking, or something that didn't include me. I was slicing strawberries in the kitchen when I looked up and saw him watching me from the doorway. Just watching, not in a flirtatious way, in that direct, unblinking way that made you feel either hunted or hollowed out. "This the daughter?" he asked, looking to my father like I wasn't standing right there. I laughed, uneasy. "I'm not the daughter. I'm just Rachel." He smirked. "Nice to meet you. Just Rachel." His name was Caleb, 27, tattoo barely peeking, from under the rolled sleeve of his linen shirt. My father called him Sharp. I called him dangerous in my head, because I could already feel something moving inside me. Slow, snake-like. Not lust. Not yet. Something older. Something hungrier. It started innocently, or so I told myself. Caleb began texting me after our third meeting. A joke here, a comment there. He was working late at my father's home office often, and I started finding reasons to stop by. To check on Dad's meds, I said. To drop off the documents. Little lies that felt harmless until they weren't. One night, I found myself parked outside the house long after my dad had gone to bed. The porch light was off, but Caleb's car was still there. I texted him, "You working late again?" He replied, instantly, "You watching me, Rachel?" Something about the way he used my name made my stomach twist. I didn't answer. A minute later, another message came through. "Come in." I didn't. Not that night. But I thought about it. Constantly. In bed. Beside my husband. In line at the grocery store. During PTA meetings. I imagined walking into that house. Into that office. Into him. I started seeing him in flashes. A hand gripping a folder. The edge of a grin behind a mug. The way his fingers curled around a pen. And then, more intrusive thoughts. His mouth at my ear. His breath hot on my throat. His hand sliding up my skirt like he owned it. Like he owned me. What scared me wasn't how aroused I was. It was how clear my mind felt in those moments. Like I was finally awake after years of sleepwalking. We never spoke about my husband. Caleb never asked. And that made it worse somehow. Like we were both pretending I was free. The emotional obsession hit before anything physical ever did. I started writing his name in the corners of my journal. I reread our texts, memorizing his phrasing. He was blunt, yes, but there was something else behind his words, this casual dominance that thrilled and frightened me in equal measure. He started showing up in my dreams. In one, he tied my wrist to a chair in my father's study and made me confess every secret I'd ever kept. I woke up panting, my thighs clenched, soaked in guilt and sweat and something that felt like relief. The next time I saw him, he touched my arm lightly, just above the elbow, in passing. A throwaway gesture. But I felt it for hours. He whispered, "You okay, Rachel?" when no one else was looking. I wasn't. And I didn't want to be. The scariest part? He knew. He saw the void inside me, the one Marcus no longer noticed. And instead of filling it, he fed it. He never kissed me. Not then. He didn't have to. He had already crawled into my head and made a home of it. I started hearing his voice when he wasn't there. Not like hearing it. I mean, actually hearing it. At least that's how it felt. Whispered behind my left ear while I was brushing my teeth. Murmured beneath the sound of the blender while I made smoothies for Marcus. Once I heard it while getting a pap smear. That one made me laugh, hysterically, until the nurse asked if I needed a moment. I told her no, but I needed something. That much was clear. I bought a new notebook, matte black, no lines, just empty space. I didn't call it a diary, not even in my head. Diaries are for teenage girls and wounded poets. What I wrote was something else. A fever, a chronic condition. January 7th. I dreamt he broke into our house but didn't steal anything. Just stood over our bed and watched me sleep. I woke up wet. January 9th. I saw him today. He didn't smile. I wanted to cry. January 13th. He touched my hand. Just once, I almost came. I couldn't stop, not writing, not thinking. I'd stare at the wall during dinner, zoning out of conversations with Marcus and our daughter, while entire films played in my head. Ones where Caleb pulled me into dark hallways, pressed me against glass windows, made me say thank you with, my mouth full of guilt. Reality became a background hum. I started forgetting things. Milk at the store, phone chargers, deadlines. I called Marcus by the wrong name once during an argument. He didn't catch it. Or maybe he did and pretended not to. That scared me more than if he'd screamed. I Googled emotional affairs one night, then obsessive infatuation disorder, then how to stop wanting someone you can't have. I never clicked on the results. I didn't want to stop. One night, Caleb and I ended up alone in the driveway of my dad's house. The stars were out. I was pretending to be normal. He wasn't. He leaned against my car, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. "You've been quiet," he said. I shrugged. Nothing to say. He stepped closer. Just one step. It was enough. "Tell me what you're thinking," he said, voice low, deliberate. "No." "Why?" "Because it's wrong." He smiled. Not cruelly. Worse. Tenderly. "That's the first honest thing you've said to me." I drove away with my palms sweating against the steering wheel and my heart lodged in my throat like a swallowed secret. I couldn't breathe. I didn't want to breathe. I wanted him. Fantasy bled into waking life. I started confusing daydreams with memory. I'd find myself walking through Target, unsure how I got there. I once had to leave a work meeting because I thought I saw him in the hallway, and my whole body went cold and hot at the same time. When I masturbated, it wasn't to images. It was to full conversations I'd imagined with him. Ones where he told me he thought about me every time he fucked someone else. Ones where he described in detail what he'd do if I gave him a key to my house. Sometimes I imagined him making me say Marcus's name while he was inside me. Sometimes I imagined telling Marcus everything just to watch it all explode. I stopped wearing my wedding ring, not on purpose. I just forgot, more than once. I knew this was madness. I knew. But knowing and stopping are not the same thing. Sometimes, I'd imagine Caleb standing behind me in the mirror while I got dressed. In my mind, he'd trace the zipper of my skirt with one finger, then hook his hand around my throat like a collar. He wouldn't say anything. He didn't have to. I was unraveling. And I wanted to be. One night, I woke up from another vivid dream. Caleb pushing me onto my knees in my childhood bedroom, calling me good girl in that voice that felt like smoke, and I couldn't go back to sleep. I went downstairs, poured wine, opened my notebook. January 22nd. I think I'm losing my mind. I want him so badly I can't eat, can't sleep, can't pretend I care about anything else. I think I'd ruin everything just to hear him say my name with his mouth between my legs. Is this what addiction feels like? Is this what love is? I tore out the page, but didn't burn it. I folded it up and slid it into the bottom of my lingerie drawer like a holy relic. A confession with no absolution. Then came the night of the dinner. Marcus and I had been invited to my dad's place for a casual meal. Caleb would be there, helping with paperwork apparently, but just in passing. That's what my father said. My heart kicked against my ribcage like a caged animal. I dressed carefully. Not too obvious. But I chose the blouse Caleb once said brought out the color of my eyes. I wore perfume I hadn't worn in months. During dinner, I could barely speak. Caleb sat across from me. Our knees brushed once under the table, and I almost knocked over my wine. My husband made a joke. Caleb laughed at it. I smiled like I meant it. But inside, I was screaming. After dessert, I went to the bathroom. Caleb followed a few minutes later. I know how that sounds, but it wasn't planned. At least, not by me. He knocked once. I opened the door. For a full 5 seconds, we just stared at each other. Then he stepped in. closed the door, locked it. We didn't touch. Not then. But the look in his eyes was louder than any kiss. "I think you want to be ruined," he said softly. And I couldn't breathe. Because he was right. And worse, he wasn't asking. He was promising. I started sleeping in the guest room after that night. Told Marcus I had a cough. He didn't question it. He was so used to my distance by then. It felt normal. Which only made it easier to imagine a world where I didn't have to pretend anymore. A world where Caleb didn't just haunt me, he claimed me, owned me, destroyed me, and I wouldn't even try to stop him. The first time we fucked, it was in the back seat of his car. My father's driveway was dark, the motion light long broken, and the engine was still warm from his earlier errands. I climbed into his lap like I was slipping into another version of myself, one with no vows, no name, no daughter sleeping down the hall in a house that smelled like quiet betrayal. Caleb didn't ask. He just pulled me down. His mouth on mine was savage, not hungry for pleasure, but for power. He kissed like he wanted to erase everyone who'd ever touched me before. And maybe I wanted that too. My blouse tore under his grip, buttons pinging off the dash, my bra shoved aside like an inconvenience. When he pushed inside me, I gasped, not from pain, but from the shock of being seen, possessed, wanted like that. And then, mid-thrust, Marcus's voice echoed in my head. "You've seemed tired lately. Are you okay?" I blinked, and my husband's face, kind, soft, unknowingly stupid, flashed across my vision like a warning. I bit Caleb's shoulder to silence the sob rising in my throat. My body betrayed me. I came hard, trembling, clutching his shirt, biting down until I tasted blood. Shame hit me the moment my breathing slowed, but I didn't pull away. I didn't even cry. I just rested my cheek on his chest and listened to the dull thud of his heartbeat as if it might tell me who I was now. We didn't speak after. I climbed off him in silence, rearranged my clothes in the rearview mirror, and went home to a man who kissed my forehead and told me he missed me lately. I whispered, "I missed you too." Lie number 237. After that, we didn't stop, didn't talk about what we were doing. That would have made it real, too fragile. But we fell into a rhythm. Motels off highways, empty office rooms. One time, in the stairwell of my father's building. That one was fast, brutal, urgent. I came with my face pressed to a concrete wall, tears streaking down my cheeks. I don't even know why. I wasn't sad. I wasn't happy. I was just unmade. Sometimes he whispered things in my ear, things that made my knees buckle. "Do you moan like that for your husband? Do you think about me when he's inside you? Tell me what he doesn't know." Told him everything, not in words, in reactions, in the way I arched when he called me a liar, in the way I came harder when he held me by the throat, in the way I stopped pretending I was still someone worth saving. One night, after a particularly vicious session in a hotel room with peeling wallpaper and stained curtains, I lay naked on the bed, staring at the ceiling while Caleb lit a cigarette. We hadn't said a word in 20 minutes. He looked at me. "You ever think about ending it?" I turned my head slowly. "With you or with him?" He exhaled. Smoke curled toward the water-stained ceiling like a ghost. "Both." I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know who him even referred to anymore. The guilt came in waves, sudden, sickening, random. I once stopped mid-blowjob because I saw a text from Marcus flash across my phone screen, on the nightstand. It was a picture of our daughter in her ballet costume. She was smiling, missing her front tooth. I felt bile rise in my throat. Caleb didn't notice. He just pulled my head back down. I let him. I came 5 minutes later and cried in the shower while he slept. Another night, Marcus and I were at dinner with friends, and someone mentioned trust, something stupid, a joke about sharing passwords. I laughed too loudly. My husband looked at me, concerned. I kissed his hand to distract him. I felt like a ghost in my own body, haunting a life I no longer lived. And yet, every time I told myself, this is the last time, I found another excuse to see Caleb. Another empty house, another parked car, another unlocked door. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Freedom? Punishment? Love? Maybe I just wanted to be devoured. To be reduced to nothing but a pulse beneath someone else's hands. Maybe that's all I ever was. The last time we had sex, and I didn't know it would be the last. He didn't touch me right. Away. He just stared, like he was memorizing the damage. And for once, it felt mutual. Because I knew then, this wasn't a love story. It wasn't even about desire anymore. It was a slow, exquisite annihilation. And I was complicit. Every thrust, every lie, every gasp into someone else's mouth. I wasn't a victim. I was a volunteer. I think I wanted to get caught. That's the only explanation for what I did next. It started with the earring. Not a diamond, a tiny gold hoop, nothing special. Caleb had pulled it from my ear with his teeth during one of our more savage encounters and dropped it somewhere in the mess of bedsheets and sweat. I didn't notice it was missing until hours later, when I got home and passed the hallway mirror. I should have lied. Said I lost it at work, dropped it in the car. Anything. Instead, I said nothing, and I left it like that. 2 days later, Marcus noticed. "Where's your other earring?" I shrugged, flipping the eggs. Lost it, I guess. He stared longer. Than necessary. "You wore them both this morning." I dropped the spatula. "I don't think so." "You did." He said it so softly, like the truth was sitting just beneath the surface, waiting. He didn't ask more. He didn't have to. That night, I found Caleb's text waiting on my locked phone. "You left your scent all over me. Might not shower for a week." I read it while lying next to Marcus in bed. I could feel his breathing shift. Slower. Tense. Was he asleep? Or just pretending? The unraveling didn't come like a scream. It came like a slow, dreadful whisper. First, Caleb started texting more, calling late, drunk sometimes. Once, he showed up outside my work, leaning against his car like he belonged there. "What are you doing?" I hissed, pulling him into the alley between buildings. He smiled lazily. "I missed you." I wanted to slap him. I wanted to kiss him. I did both. But the kiss didn't land right. It felt wrong. Too public. Too real. And his breath stank of whiskey and desperation. "I have a meeting," I muttered, pulling away. He grabbed my wrist. "Say it." "What?" "That you love me." I froze. And for the first time since this started, I felt afraid. The messages turned needy, then nasty. "You're mine. I don't care what you say. You let him touch you after I fucked." "You? You're disgusting. If you leave, I'll tell him everything. Think I won't?" I blocked his number. He made another one. I blocked that too. I changed my phone passcode. Started locking my laptop. Marcus noticed. "Why so secretive lately?" he joked one night, grinning. I laughed too hard. He didn't grin after that. Then came the email. An anonymous address. Subject line, "You deserve the truth." Inside, 3 photos. One of me and Caleb in the back of his car, barely visible, but the outline of my body was unmistakable. One of a hotel receipt in my name. One, the worst, of me, naked, curled on his chest. Eyes closed, lips parted. It was sent to Marcus's inbox. And mine. I don't know what Caleb wanted. Revenge? Attention? Control? All I know is I opened the email while standing in the kitchen, phone in one hand, knife in the other. The sound of our daughter laughing in the living room sliced through me like a blade. My body went numb. I dropped the knife, and I waited. 5 minutes later, Marcus called my name. He was holding his phone. His face was blank. Too blank. "Is this you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. He didn't scream, didn't throw anything. He just stared at me, like I was a riddle someone had solved too late. "I trusted you," he said finally. "God, I loved you." I sat down on the cold tile floor, and I laughed. Not because it was funny, because everything had finally shattered, and I was still alive. Marcus left that night. He took our daughter. Said it was just for a few days. Said he needed space. I didn't fight him. I let them go. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the outline of where his pillow used to be, trying to feel something. Shame. Relief. Rage. But all I felt was hollow. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I knew who it was before I answered. "I told you this would happen," Caleb said. His voice was calm. Too calm. "You ruined everything," I whispered. "No," he replied. "You did." He was right. And suddenly, I hated him for it. That night, I drove to his apartment. Not to fuck, not to cry, to end it. I told him everything was over. That if he contacted me again, I'd go to the police. That I'd confess to Marcus myself. That I didn't care anymore who knew what. Caleb didn't move. He just stared at me, a shadow in his doorway. "You loved it," he said. "Every second." I didn't deny it. Because I had. But love wasn't the right word for what we did. It was need. It was rot. It was madness. And now it was done. I left without saying goodbye. And when the door closed behind me, it sounded like a final breath. It's been 42 days. The house is quiet now. Too quiet. No tiny footsteps. No familiar scent of Marcus's aftershave clinging to the bathroom steam. Just me, the ticking kitchen clock, and the constant echo of what I destroyed. I sleep. In the guest room now. Not because I have to, but because I don't belong in our bed anymore. The sheets still smell like lavender detergent and loyalty. I don't deserve them. Some nights, I lie awake staring at the ceiling, waiting to hear the front door open, hoping, dreading. Sometimes I imagine Marcus standing there, holding our daughter, eyes full of tears and something darker. But the door never opens. They don't come back. I still check Caleb's social media. He hasn't posted in weeks. Blocked me, maybe. Or moved on. Or maybe he's watching. Waiting. I think about that sometimes. About him sitting in his car across the street, watching the lights flicker on and off, imagining me in the dark, undone, unmade, unfinished. I wonder what I look like from the outside. Do I still look like someone who was loved? Or just someone who wrecked love? I go to therapy now. Not because I want to be forgiven. That feels impossible. But because I need someone to hear me. Really hear me. I talk about my father. about growing up with silence, with rules, about desire and hunger and wanting something so badly it starts to feel like oxygen. My therapist nods a lot. She hasn't asked why I haven't cried. I think she knows. I'm not empty. I'm full of ghosts, of guilt, of versions of myself that no longer exist. Sometimes I think I see Caleb in the corner of my eye, a flicker in a crowd, a shadow crossing the street. He never turns around, but I feel him, like heat, like danger. And Marcus? He hasn't called. Not once. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But the worst part isn't the silence. It's that part of me, the ugliest, most hidden part, misses the chaos, misses the fire, misses him. And I don't know what that says about me. Maybe I don't want to know.